All right. So basically, a lot has happened since King Amalric died. He was the last good king, basically, the king of Jerusalem. But when he died abruptly, and it was kind of unfortunate. So now his son is on the throne, or he was on the throne. He dies later before the Third Crusade too. His son had leprosy though, unfortunately. So of course he's basically fucked. He was only 14 when that happened too, when he was diagnosed. Uh, I feel bad for him, and I think because he's kind of a tragic character, because he kind of gets, because of his leprosy, everyone around him treats him basically like he's not there, and just trying to use their power to maneuver who's going to be a successor, basically, and that basically brings in his sister, Sibylla, and he's trying to find the best possible match for her, basically, while also kind of fighting, like doing raids into Saladin's territory and whatnot. And he had settled on a guy, but he was actually a good guy. He'll reoccur in the story later, and he's actually one of the few guys who I think is worthy of some praise. It before the Third Crusade. Yeah, it's that bad. It's just like the Second Crusade again. Um, and his name was Balin of Iblan, and he was exactly what they were looking for. He's in a very he wants an aggressive expansionist policy against the Muslims, and he owns land. He's it just makes sense. But the other side, the other faction, which was led by Agnes, which is like I think his mom or something, or his stepmom, and she wanted her lover's like younger brother to marry Sibylla, and his name was Guy de Lusignan, and oh god, he's a fucking loser. But so basically, they go with Guy because she just falls in love with him. But, and they have a battle between the Muslims and Guy, where basically nothing. It's like the phony war. Nothing happens, but like everyone thinks Guy's a fucking idiot for this, because it wasn't like a strategy. It was more just like a, oh well, fuck, I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm too indecisive, and because of that, everyone doesn't already thinks bad about him. And he did this under Baldwin, which was the Leper King's name, uh, like tutelage almost. And Baldwin, who's still like 18 at this point, is just like, all right, like take like please just disinherit him already, or like marry someone else. He like they implore her Sibyl to marry someone else, and but Baldwin dies abruptly, so the church hears about this, so they send representatives to the Pope, and they're like, all right, hold on, do not get married yet, do not have a coronation yet, just wait until the Pope sends his representatives, and like they'll sort everything out. Of course they don't wait, because there's no real way to stop them. So they're like, all right, Sibylla, we're gonna line up a bunch of guys, and you can pick who you want, and you'll never guess who she fucking picks. She picks her former husband, Guy de Lusignan, who's just like really not the guy type of guy we want reading the Kingdom of Jerusalem, because he's just too inexperienced and he's not really a good commander. Um, and then so in walks through. We got to talk about the third character. This guy's the worst one. He's a bloodthirsty moron, basically. His name is Reynald de Chatillon, and he basically made a name for him. He made a name for. He was actually a part of the Second Crusade. He fought in it. He was a veteran, but he made a name for himself. Firstly, when he, as under like the tutelage of the king, or not king, but like the ruler of Antioch, he led an expedition to Cyprus and just went on a killing spree, basically. Like it was like unprecedentedly bad, and everyone's just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And already you can tell that this guy's just a bloodthirsty asshole. Um, and so basically, here's the big thing he does. is he during Guy's reign. So this is Guy de Lusignan. Before this is so Guy is king, and he's also just a petty noble, by the way. Before he got became king, so yeah, he didn't really have any real connections. But Reynald leads like an insanely ambitious, but also like just like fucked up raid that goes down the coast of the Red Sea and actually semi like sack Mecca basically. Like they killed a bunch of pilgrims to Mecca, and like basically all of Islam is just like they're just like outraged, and it makes Saladin look like a dumbass because he was busy fighting another Muslim at the time. And so he's like, okay, well this guy needs to die basically. So he like tries and goes and invades Reynald's territory. But Guy intervenes, is like, we need a truce. Like, we should just call a truce. But like he just wants, and like Saladin's literally just like, I just want to kill Reynald. Like it's that bad. And they try and like reprimand Reynald and whatever. But they don't give him to the Muslims. So but they call a truce and they're like, okay, only thing here is like this was like a 2-year truce. If we can keep this going, then like then we'll at least have peace for a bit. And all we have to do is not attack like Muslim caravans. And you'll never guess what happens is like a year passes and another like the caravans have been going through, but then Reynald just all of a sudden he saw another caravan and he decided to attack it, and that basically ended the truce. And because of that, like Saladin was just like, well, I've had enough of this. Just gonna invade the king of Jerusalem because fuck Reynald. Like literally, Reynald is half the reason why he decided to invade, because he's just like, fuck these guys, I'm done. I've had it with them, and because just how weak they are because of Guy is just a terrible ruler. So they invade, and the Crusaders or like the Latin Christians mount a defense. They get like everyone in the kingdom, but they're still outnumbered either way. And of course, they have two choices here. This is preceding the famous Battle of Hattin, where the Muslims won like a epic victory, basically just like a just rout. And basically the lead up to it was there were two choices. So the Muslims were about to take this city of Tiberias. And what happens is there were two choices. One, Raymond of Antioch, who was a good rule, like that was the Leper King's uncle actually, and his tutor for most of his regent for most of his reign. He was a good guy. He's you can trust him. He's like, all right, we don't have any armies, like we don't have anyone garrisoning half the towns because we took them all to fight the Muslim army. So we should just let them take the city. We can fight another day. We cannot lose like a pitched battle because we're not in a good spot right here. Of course, Reynald Shasyan's like, oh, well, you should attack them right now. We need to set the precedent right now. We need to save them. And all that can, and like Guy will think about is how he did this like a few years ago. And he's like, okay, I guess I need to attack them because otherwise everyone's going to think I'm a fool again. And of course, they just get destroyed. The Battle of Hattin is a disaster, and the Muslims know exactly how to counter everything they're doing, and it's just a complete rout. And they capture like everyone. And it's funny because one of the few nobles they killed was Reynald. They're just like, we're executing him. Like, this is non-negotiable. He's going to be executed. And then Guy, who's just like a buffoon, basically. They're just like, whatever. Just they let him live, but they're like, you're a prisoner. So yeah, that's the lead up to the Crusade, and then they capture Jerusalem again. And actually, we'll bring back to the guy we were talking about earlier. Balin was actually trying to command the garrisons of the two cities uh it was Tyre and Jerusalem. He moved from Tyre to Jerusalem because, Tyre is just like, it's a, it has the causeway. It's very easy to defend. And because of that, he goes to Jerusalem and he mounts like a pretty good defense, but there was just no chance. They didn't really have a good chance. And he negotiates with Saladin. And he actually like shook him down a little bit. He like at first Saladin was just like unconditional surrender or we massacre everyone. Because if you remember, that's what happened when the Christians came in the first 1099 siege of Jerusalem. That's basically what happened. Uh and because of that, but then what's his name? Balin's just like, oh well, if you do that, if you don't give me negotiating promises, I will destroy the Dome of the Rock and the Al Aqsa Mosque. And Saladin's like, all right, what are your terms? And so they eventually come to terms and saying like, oh, everyone in Jerusalem will pay their ransom. Basically, it would be, otherwise they'll be sold into slavery. But if I really like this part was Balin was very mindful. He's like, but this is disadvantageous for the poor of the Christians of Jerusalem. So therefore, I will pay a 30,000 or 7,000 coins or whatever right now or no, not 7,000, 30,000 to save the 7,000 poorest citizens so they can go free. I thought that was very nice. I thought that was mindful of how the money system would be, disadvantageous to certain people. So that was nice. And Balin is allowed to leave with his family because Saladin, again, like this made me like I was like it almost made me root for the Muslims because Saladin is actually a competent ruler and was very gracious, and he always gave them like a way out basically, but like it was because of some bloodthirsty moron or just a idiotic decision or just fate, I guess, or whatever, or just bad luck that the Christians just kept making mistakes here and there, and it was just like, yeah, again, bad. So now the Third Crusade is about to start. I'm excited to get more insight into it because you have the infamous, like, this is the King's Crusade, so this is this is possibly the most famous one besides the First Crusade, I would say. So maybe besides the Fourth Crusade, but that's famous for different reasons. So here we go.